friends, this is Thaddeus from Going Nerdy, and today I want to talk about a few things that might help you in the Grand Arena. Now, what I want to do specifically today is give you a few additional tips for those of you who might be struggling. Now, if you are a Grand Arena aficionado, if you have been coming in first place from day one, this video is not for you. It's just not. But if you're struggling, if you have if you're just not doing well and you want to do better, this video is meant for you. I have essentially 4 steps or 4 parts to this video. And the first thing that I want you to do, the first thing that you need to do is you need to know where you're going to go, or at least set a goal and have a place to go. Now, it sounds dumb, but if you don't know where you want to go, you'll never really know if you got there. Once you've set a goal, you know what you're aiming for, you know how you're going to do it, right? Set a goal, write it down, move to the next step. The next step is to actually look at your opponent's roster. Now, there's 2 ways to do this. There's the in-game way where you can click on this little section and it brings you to all the people you're facing, and you can choose your specific person. And you can look at all of the person's roster. You can look at their characters, you can look at the kits and everything. I don't like that as much as this next option, which is to go SWGOH.gg and actually type in their ally number. Now, you can find that ally number in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen there, or you can, I think you can even type in their profile name. What I think you need to do is you need to have your screen set up like mine. This is the easiest for me because what I can do here is I can compare my stats to theirs. I can know what kind of player I'm going against. Now, this isn't going to help. This part's not going to help me as much as, say, figure out what teams I need to be using. What this is going to do is tell me what kind of player I'm going up against. Now, right off the bat, I know one thing, right? Current rank, this is me, 55. I'm here on the left. This is my opponent. He or she is 54. They are using a Revan team. This is a fully meted Reva team. This is a fully zated, fully geared. But as you can see, this is their highest rank is 43 and their lowest rank is 132. So what does that tell me? One, it tells me that they have the meta. They know what the meta is. They're daily players and they're familiar with what it takes to grind, with what it takes to gear up the characters they need to gear up. I look at mine. Well, I'm not really running a Revan team. I have a Revan team. I have the meta team. I don't like them, and I don't know them as well, and so I've got my CLS team. Now, I'm 55 with a CLS team. Again, that doesn't say a ton about me, but it says that I know that I've been part of old metas, that I've part of older metas. Looking at characters, I have 170 characters. This person has 169. 156 of his characters are 7-star. 153 of my characters are 7-star. So he has more 7-star characters than I do. He has a deeper roster. 6-star characters, I have 2. He has 4. So again, he has a deeper roster. Gear 12 is where the biggest difference comes. I have 54 Gear 12 tunes. He has 35. Now, is it that he's spending his crystals crazily? Is it spending his gear randomly? I don't necessarily think so. If you look at his gear 11, he's got 23, gear 10, 17. If you look at my gear 11, I've got 15, 21, right? What does this tell me? If you want to scroll down here, if you look at their information, right? We have similar galactic powers. He outmatches me by a couple thousand, not by much. By character power, I outweigh him by quite a bit, by a little more than 140,000 it looks like. If you look at ship power though, his ship power totally outweighs me, right? He is solid with ships. Looking at his fleet arena down here, he's 34. I'm 123. He's a lot better than me at ships. And so that's something that I need to be aware of. That's something that I need to be prepared for. If you're in a Grand Arena that doesn't have ships, if you're in a Grand Arena that just doesn't have that node available, which we've seen a couple of times recently, then you can just skip this section. But if you look at something like this, Guild Raids 1, right? I've got 776. He's got 522. Does that mean that he's in a new guild, that he's not done very well? Not necessarily. If you look at squad arena battles, for me, I have 3,298 wins. He has 1,423. Based on that, based on everything that I see, there are a few things that I can assume. Now, you gotta be careful when you assume. We all know the thing about assumptions, right? Let's say it with me. When you assume, you can be wrong, right? I'm pretty sure we all know it that way. It's not that you break up that word or do anything. But anyways, right? When you assume, you can be wrong. But the assumption that I'm making about this person is, one, he knows the meta. He doesn't know it so well that he can beat the mirror match and is in the top 10, okay? Which also means his mods aren't phenomenal. They're probably really good. Now I can look at his mods and then it'll give me an additional breakdown, and it'll be very helpful if you are concerned about that. It gives you an additional layer. But I personally am not going to do that right now. What it also tells me is he's a newer player than I am. Now, it doesn't mean that he's worse than I am. It just means that he hasn't been around as long. Again, I have a different focus. My focus is all about collecting. It looks to me, I can make an assumption that this person is all about doing well, all about arena. Again, the fact that he's not that far behind me with Guild Raids 1, that tells me that he's in a solid guild that does really well. Now, if I wanted to look further, I could look at his guild and say, oh, this is the guild he's in, so on and so forth, right? I could really break it down. But this is someone who's probably going to set a great defense, or at least a solid one. He's probably going to have a really good understanding of Grand Arena, and he knows how to defeat the best team. So, what is my next step? Well, my next step is to actually go into his character list and see just how my characters compare to his, how effective my teams are going to be to his. Now, right off the bat, I see a few things. Now, I saw the Revan team. He has a great Revan team. I see that he has Rey Jedi Training and Commander Luke Skywalker. So what does that mean? That means he's got some solid teams at his disposal. He is someone who understands or chases the meta. Here's one thing that kind of stands out to me. He has Bosk. Now, Bosk is a notoriously good defensive team. So what that means is I might want to make sure to keep a strong or offensive team that can beat Bosk. Now, to do that, I'll talk about how to do that here in a minute. But are there any other major flags that I see? Personally, there's nothing that kind of stands out. It does look like he's got a solid Phoenix team. He has a lot of characters that are really good, but at the same time, he doesn't have everyone, right? I'm not seeing a C-3PO. Yeah, I'm not seeing a C-3PO, which means I do have a little bit of an advantage on him. Now, there's a few things that I also see. I see a Visas Mar as Gear 12 Zated. That's a solid character. That's a great anti-Sith character. I'm seeing Night Sister Mother Talzin Zated, but not Gear 12. I see some other characters here. And so the idea here, what I'm seeing, what I'm speculating is he is going to have he's going to have a handful of meta teams, but he's going to have a handful of weaker teams as well. And so what I can do is once I have identified the major characters, I'm going to save a handful of my direct counters to these teams. And then I'm going to go into what I call a self-evaluation. A self-evaluation is essentially looking at your play style. How do you play? How do you handle? How do you do these different things? One, if you are like me, you're spastic, you make mistakes, ADHD has not been your friend your entire life, and you are easily distracted. If you're easily distracted, you're easily frustrated. So, once you know how you play, you can then, takes me to the next step, is how to set your lineup. Now, there's 3 specific ways you can do this. You can do an offensive heavy, a defensive heavy, or a balanced approach. A balanced approach just means you metas on both sides. You have offensive metas, you have defensive metas. Now, I do suggest you leave your offensive teams specifically for offense, and your defensive teams, your defensive heavy teams specifically for defense. Defensive heavy team is for players who you're going to try, but you may not want to try that hard. Right? You're going to do your best, but maybe you're not. Maybe you're at work when Grand Arena goes down, and maybe you don't want to do your best. Maybe this is just a thing, right? And you're just like, whatever. Defensive teams, in my mind, are there for, you know what? I want to see what I can do. I want to stop the other guy from winning, but at the same time, I don't want to go all in and spend a ton of time here. If you aren't familiar with enough defensive strategy, my suggestion is go heavy offense. Now, because you don't know what they're setting up first, that's kind of a bonus for you. Here, this person sees that I have a ton of Gear 12 teams, and he might be expecting me to place a series of awesome defensive teams. But what if I don't do that? What if he prepares for my awesome defense by saving his best for offense and then doesn't put in solid defense? Well, that gives me an opportunity to really come at him hard, you know. I know my playstyle, and I've struggled with a balanced approach. And so what I'm going to do in this specific event is I'm going to set some very solid, like 2 very dependable defensive teams. It will force him to potentially use a meta, and hopefully it'll get him to a point where he'll have to run the event a couple times or run the battle a couple times. Now that's my goal. I don't want to put all of my best teams on defense. What I want to do, knowing that I'm going to make mistakes and I'm going to do something stupid because that's just how I am and that's the thing that I do, is I'm going to save some of my best teams for offense. Now I'll definitely use my defensive teams for defense, my best defensive teams for defense. But I might throw in a couple of random ones that might throw the person off. That might be that he will just use and attack. Now, when you're doing this, the key thing to remember is you don't want him to be able to beat you right off the bat. And so the thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to know and understand the right counters. Now, this is a counter chart on Reddit. I'll leave a link to this in the section below. But this is a solid list, and it goes through all the things that all the teams, what their strong counters are, what their soft counters are, various soft counters, and the idea behind the countering mechanism. Now, that's the important part, because if you can use fewer characters, you're going to be rewarded for more, but those characters have to be geared properly, going up against the right teams. If you're not familiar with this, check this chart out, guys. I mean, bring it up on your phone, bring it up while you're playing. Now, the other thing, and I like this one as well, this is a physical, it's a visual, it's more visual, but it does help you kind of see what counters are available, what counters do the best. Now, currently, the Treya counter, Treya and Revan are hard counters for pretty much every team that's out there. They can beat pretty much every team that's currently in existence. You just have to use them properly. Now, that being said, guys, these are just a few of the tips that I have. You can reach out to your opponent in chat. I think that's a really cool thing. But what I suggest you do, take your time. Follow these very brief, very basic tips to help you do your best in your next Grand Arena. And leave a comment in the section below. This has been Thaddeus from Going Nerdy. Like, subscribe, share. Join us on Discord. Follow me on Instagram, on Twitter. As always, my friends, smile and stay nerdy.